Welcome back. We are still here at BlockShow Singapore. Right now we keep bringing you guest after guest, hitting you with knowledge, giving you little tidbits of information, something you can take home if you're not home, and actually implement this into your everyday life. We're giving you the follow-ups, we're giving you the resources, everything you need to take part of this blockchain revolution. And it is televised because you're watching it right now. So, would you please love to introduce yourself to the D-Live world and tell them who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much. So my name is Alvaro Fernandez. My background has been predominantly venture capital in crypto for the past 3 years. Getting involved with incubations in the past as well, and with the latest firm I was working with, JRR, part of JRR Holdings. It's basically a venture capital firm which is focusing as well into incubation and consulting for non-crypto companies as well. So I was pivoting a little bit from the investment side into the incubation of a quite big project that we were working with, which is Alldex, and it's basically creating an open finance ecosystem with 3 platforms: spot, derivatives exchange, and a social wallet, a social platform, just like WeChat, WhatsApp, but crypto-friendly, crypto-native, with the objective of building that ecosystem that gives way more value to the actual users instead of having to independently connect to the different platforms. So personally pivoting as well to Alldex itself, currently as director for European markets, and yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Okay, thank you for coming. Absolutely. How have you enjoyed the show so far?
It was amazing. I mean, very good content since the very morning. We had the MAS showing how proactive they are towards regulation in cryptocurrencies. We had some very good engagement, more from the social perspective with Lil Bubble. Love that guy. And no, very good, very good. Definitely one of the conferences to be.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. We appreciate it here at BlockShow. So what I wanted to know, actually what I think the audience truly wants to know is, how can they engage with you if they have a project looking to disrupt some of the traditional businesses out of there and offer them a platform or a service that would really bring them into this whole blockchain world? How can they reach out to you? How can they engage with you?
Reach out to me on Twitter, Telegram, etc. Of course, no, but going deeper into it, I was actually just talking about it on stage. There is an increasing demand from traditional companies that want to get engaged with blockchain technology. Recently, I'm based in China. Xi Jinping, the president, was mentioning about the huge potential within blockchain technology, and suddenly everybody popping up. They want to have engagement with blockchain, with cryptocurrencies, etc. So you can have blockchain as a service to be sold, but if we look at the bigger picture, it's not the protocol, the blockchain itself, that should be sold. It's more the guidelines, how to direct into it, how to pivot into it. It's about building the application on top of the protocol, or creating the value from the ecosystem, capturing that value, and then engaging with that second layer that would be more useful, more scalable in this case.
So as a VC, when you're looking at investments, former in that mental state, are you looking at the same return on investment as traditional in fintech world, or is this new blockchain revolution something that we're building out for 15 years, 30 years? We're not looking at a 2 to 5 year return right now. Are you thinking that mentality with the companies you're working with and building?
So, through my experience on the venture capital scene in blockchain, we passed through complete crazes. 2017, for example,
right.
If it was not a 10x return, people were not even thinking about investing, things like that. So what you can take as a norm is that blockchain is a very fast-moving space. So from an investment perspective, you can expect returns to be faster in general, but that's going to be slowly consolidating more and more as we grow within the industry. And those tokenized investments that were bringing you huge returns, yes, they can still be there, but I would not disencourage to invest in equity as well. Some of the biggest companies from back in the internet era, Amazon, etc., those equity investments, I mean, have been quite solid investments. And the same opportunities that you had in those time frames, you're eventually having them now as well on the crypto industry.
Okay. So what sectors are you seeing that are really lighting you up? that you're really gravitating towards? As soon as you see that little phrase on an email or a chat, you're gravitating towards a solution for that industry. What would that be?
So it really depends on the investment thesis that you have. So from my perspective, I really see the potential and the returns on the investment on user-facing applications.
Okay.
So you can as well invest in protocols, which I personally
Give me an
did.
example of a user-facing protocol that you like.
Well, user-facing application is literally an exchange, for example.
Okay, so let's get into exchanges now. Let's get into that because we know you have a couple of exchanges under your belt.
Yeah.
What are you doing there, and what's your plan for the future?
So to make very quick the comparison, let's take the comparison between protocol investment and exchange investment,
Okay.
user-facing application. A protocol, to see the actual adoption, it's a cycle that's eventually going to be relatively longer than user-facing applications. Mouth-to-mouth, virality, etc., makes those platforms to build faster. So let's look at Binance, for example. Popped up in 2017, and now it's pretty much, yeah, totally. So,
yeah, they pretty much run the world in this world right
exactly,
at this point.
yeah.
Okay, so supply chain we're speaking a lot about supply chain, and I'm hearing a lot today about marketplaces and exchanges. That's been a lot of buzz. It's had a lot of buzz around it. It's in the atmosphere right in the show today. What's the benefit? What's the competitive differentiation in your two platforms that you're offering than what we're hearing all over the place about exchanges?
Well, we're talking about innovation as of crypto, as of blockchain, which is disrupting the financial industry. You can exchange value. For that exchange of value, you need liquidity. How do you obtain that liquidity? You need to go to an exchange. So those businesses are completely being disrupted for the past 5, 7, 8, 9 years we've seen in the sphere. But they're not only going to spot, they're actually pivoting towards more complex, more mature markets, instruments, futures, derivatives, etc. And there's a whole world still to be explored in that sense. Now think about this as well. So up to now, there's a lot of liquidity for trading cryptocurrencies, but let's think about the utility that you have from US dollar perspective. You can take your fiat, you can go to a stock exchange, you can go to a commodities exchange, you can go wherever you want, and you can trade different financial products.
Right.
Can you do it with Bitcoin?
Absolutely not.
You cannot do it yet.
Not yet.
So,
not yet.
That's
so
the
these are the
derivatives part.
improvements, right?
Exactly.
These are the improvements that you're working on.
That's one of the bets that we're making with Alldex, with a derivatives platform, to bring that interoperability between assets collateralized with Bitcoin. So you can utilize the Bitcoins to invest into commodities, stocks, futures.
These are the steps that we need for overall adoption. Would you
Exactly.
agree? Yeah.
And you have an increase in crypto native companies, which are not so settled into USD, they're settling in Bitcoin.
Right.
Hedge funds, VCs, trading firms, they don't have to be isolated in this analog world, which is blockchain or crypto.
Right.
They want to have interoperability. If there's an exposure or an opportunity, a window of opportunity to enter in a different market, you want to take over it.
Absolutely.
So.
Okay. So you identified the need, we saw it happen, you realized I could be doing business with this company right now. Their family fund has X Bitcoin. Okay. So you've had that experience.
Yeah.
yes. I've heard a few experiences there, and the trust factor also.
That's correct. That's a very disputable situation where, I mean, it was a moment where many hacks were putting into place. So it's this not your keys, not your funds, etc. It's a reality.
Yes.
So it's under your own responsibility to have these assets into a centralized exchange or not. But that's where regulation comes into place, to set standards, to set guidelines, to set security towards the users that are coming in.
Okay.
So
you have to find, are you working with even more regulation now? Or are you finding yourself, there's sweet spots because of your vast experience to, I wouldn't say avoid regulation, but realize that there's opportunity for blockchain to take advantage of where they haven't over-regulated an area.
Exactly. So you got to be careful with over-regulation, but regulation itself is very much needed to make all these things sustainable.
Right.
So the only problem, which we were mentioning right now in the panel, is regulation is not proactive. It's reactive. So if you're innovating with new financial products, for example, with the ones I was saying, you got to eventually either be in talks with the regulators or wait for them to see and where they're going to grab it from to be able to frame the guideline to be able to regulate it. And sometimes it's over-regulated, they're preventive, so they go say like, oh no, thank you, in that sense. But sooner or later it's coming. It's basically, it's a whole path. It's a transition that you have to go through.
What governments are more friendly to the regulation that you would like to propose?
Singapore has been proving that they're quite proactive in that sense. From the Hong Kong perspective, for example, some of, from Alldex perspective, we hold quite a few licenses from Hong Kong perspective. So it's, if you're innovating in that sense, you need to be betting on those different countries that are actually letting you be regulated. So yeah, even Germany as well. So the BaFin, German SEC, was 1 month ago coming up with new guidelines, which were very detailed, very clear for digitalized securities, for example, even having a proposal to digitalize the euro in a 5-year plan to eventually have a digital asset, which is the euro. So it's just a proposal, but yet another step which is being taken, and it's good to see.
Wow, that's pretty big. So what's a recent announcement with you and the company that you'd like to share with our audience?
So from our perspective, from our side, we're actually, 2 of these 3 platforms I was just mentioning from Alldex, the Spot Exchange and the wallet is going to be launched end of the month.
Okay.
Not sure if I can say this on camera, but
keep an eye out for that. And where should they look? Point them in the direction of where they should look for the end of the month.
Totally. So you can find us on Twitter, on Telegram, on multiple channels. So just look for Alldex. We're around. But we're going to be coming live, and it's going to be with some good announcements as well. So
all right.
Stay tuned.
Another little bit of info for you. I can't thank you enough, but before you leave, is there any advice for the entrepreneurs, innovators, the CEOs out there, and what you've learned over the past year in blockchain that you could part them with?
Let's try it from an investment perspective, because we had situations where a lot of investors were coming in at 20K, getting burned. We had a lot of straight out scams because of the lack of regulations. So if I had to come from that perspective, do your own due diligence, and it's never enough. So please, if you're overdoing it, it's the right thing to do. And until we're going towards the more established regulatory ambient in blockchain, be careful in that sense, because it's what is keeping us a little bit lagging when the newcomers are getting burned with these cases, which is quite sad to see.
That makes the headlines above anything, because those are the ones they're not used to it. So so we've got to do a better job of protecting those guys.
Yeah.
All right, and they've got to do a better job of protecting themselves as well, because this is about personal responsibility when you start taking on your keys and you start taking away infrastructures. Yeah. So do your work. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you so much.
And saying hello, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the show, sir.
Thank you.
All right.